What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. We have some breaking news this morning as Tennessee has hired their next head coach. It's Josh Heupel coming from UCF, and I'll give you my reaction to this hire, and we'll talk about kind of what he has done throughout his career and what this could mean for Tennessee. I'll just go ahead and tell you, I think it's probably a good hire. I think this is a pretty good move by Tennessee because you're getting a guy that can give you an explosive offense, and that's what Tennessee has really lacked. They have not really gone to that spread type attack in the last several years. I guess you could say with Butch Jones, they were kind of that way, but they haven't really, I think, gone aggressive with an offensive mind like Josh Heupel in a long time, I guess since Lane Kiffin. So I think this is a good move. I think you need this style if you're going to compete with Georgia and Alabama and the top teams in the SEC. Will he be able to do that? We'll have to wait and see. It kind of all started when they brought in UCF's athletic director, Dana White. You have to wonder now, Danny White, I should say, not Dana White. You have to wonder now, was that the plan from the beginning? Did they want to bring him in and then have him bring his guy over from UCF? Very interesting, and I don't know if that was the plan or because they hired Danny White, he wound up going with Josh Heupel. Very interesting, but both guys going to come over from UCF. And again, I think this is a pretty good move, and it was going to be tough to get a big name when you've got all of the sanctions and everything that are about to come down on Tennessee. They're probably going to have a bowl ban. I don't know how many years. And recruiting's probably going to be pretty tough at the beginning. But if they can get through that, I think they've got a guy that can maybe finally turn Tennessee around. Again, we'll have to wait and see. I think recruiting is going to be big. What can he do as a recruiter at Tennessee? Because you got to have those elite players if you're going to compete with Georgia and Alabama. You just do. So that'll be interesting. He's recruited some good quarterbacks in the past. He's recruited Landry Jones, Trevor Knight. So he's had some success. And I think particularly the quarterback position, that is what is so big about this move, because you've got a guy that has developed quarterbacks, has worked with great quarterbacks in the past, including Sam Bradford at Oklahoma, Drew Lock at Missouri. And so you've got a guy that can develop quarterbacks that can have success in the passing game, which is what Tennessee has needed in a big way. They just have not been able to be explosive through the air. They have not had great offenses these past several years. And maybe with a guy like Josh Heupel, you're able to do that. So that is big. I think it's a good hire, like I said. And you look at what he has done throughout his career. You go back to his time as an assistant coach. He was a graduate assistant at Oklahoma. Then he went to Arizona for a year in 2005, a tight ends coach. Then he comes over to Oklahoma as a quarterbacks coach from 06 to 2010, like I said. He developed Sam Bradford, some other great quarterbacks there at Oklahoma. Was the co-offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach from 2011 to 2014. Didn't really end well there. So he went off to Utah State for 1 year, then came over to Missouri. Then he took over that head coaching job at UCF. And you can look at the record and you can say, well, he took over a program that Scott Frost had built to be a dominant force, a dominant group of five team, a team that had just gone undefeated. And really, he's only gone down from there. He was 12-1 his first year. That one loss coming to LSU in the Fiesta Bowl. Then 10-3. And then 6-4 this past year. If you look at his record in the American Conference, from 8-0 to 6-2 to 5-3, you can look at that and say, well, this is just a guy that inherited a program that was doing great, and he kind of slowly has let it go, and long term he's not going to be that successful. You can look at it that way, yes, but I don't, because if you look at 2020 in particular, this past year, UCF had a ton of opt-outs. I mean, they lost a ton of players, and then during the middle of the year, they lost a bunch of guys that got in trouble. So I don't look into that too much. I think the jury is still out, and you can still see that they were competitive in their games. They weren't getting blown out by teams. They had chances to win most of those games. So I don't think that you can look at that and say that he's going to be a bad coach, but I think he's going to have to prove himself in the SEC. He's going to have to prove that he can get it done in the SEC, a place that has not been able to win So this is going to be a big challenge for him. Again, you look at the quarterback position. That's, I think, the key. You needed a guy that could work with quarterbacks. He was able to come in. He had McKenzie Milton. He was already there. But then here comes Dylan Gabriel, really out of nowhere. No one had even heard of him. He was able to develop him into really one of the top quarterbacks in the country. I think he's a very underrated guy. So I think he's done a really good job with quarterbacks, and that's what Tennessee needs. You wonder, could he maybe bring some transfers in from UCF? Some guys to help boost this roster, because they have lost a ton of guys to transfers, and that is going to be big for really his first year, is filling these holes on this roster. And maybe they don't. Maybe Tennessee's just awful next year. But I think you get this guy in here, you start to change the culture, change the offensive system. He'll start to get his guys, and you can look for Tennessee really in about 3 years. We're going to find out, was he a good hire? Was this a good move? If they start to improve and start to compete with the top teams in the SEC, obviously it was a great move. If they don't, Tennessee probably struck out again. But I think he's going to do a good job. I don't know that he's going to get them up to Georgia's level or Alabama's level, but I was talking about this the other day. When you talk about the SEC East, Tennessee is a program that should be able to win the East, I would say, once out of every 5 years. I think that's kind of the bar for Tennessee. Out of every 5-10 years, you should win 1 or 2 SEC, or at least get to the SEC championship 1 out of 5 years. That's kind of what I think Tennessee should be. I think they're a program that's good enough to do that. And so that's kind of the bar for me. And I think in 5 years, this team should be making it to an SEC championship, or at least getting really close and competing and being right there with among the top teams in the SEC East. If they can do that, I think this is a good hire. If they continue to finish in the middle of the pack in the SEC East, this wasn't a good hire, and only time will tell. But like I said, I think this was a good move. I think they got the right guy, a guy that can kind of change things and change Tennessee into something that they haven't been in a long time, and give them that explosive offense. Now, will they be able to recruit? Will they be able to fill the holes on defense? Who's going to be its defensive coordinator? That's going to be the big question. Those two things, really. Those two things, recruiting and the defensive side of the ball. If he can get it done there, I trust him on the offensive side. And if they can do the other two things, Tennessee is going to be a competitor again in the SEC East. What do you guys think about this? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for more here on the SG1 Sports College Football Channel.